All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Retic Lounge. I'm Nathan Katz. We have Lucas Bagnara, your other host, here with us. I just got back from the Reptilian Nation Expo here in Salt Lake City today. Got to
Is it a good
see.
show?
Yeah, it was a little bit bigger than last time for sure. I actually spent the day across the hall over at the Oddities and Curiosities Expo, and just caught the Reptile Expo for the last hour, just to almost like a pre-Arlington kickoff, seeing some faces that I may see there, and you know, saying hi to some local friends.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm jealous. I wish that, I don't want to say I wish. I was just, I think last month or the month before, there was a span of a few weekends where I was going to some shows here in San Antonio, and it's actually nice. I haven't really connected a lot with the community in San Antonio, and I definitely want to start doing that more because I was talking to some people and I was kind of being approached, and they're like, "Hey, you breed super dwarfs," and I was like, "Yeah, I do." And there's San Antonio doesn't have a lot of retic people in general, and so I definitely kind of want to dive in a little bit more to the local scene. But you mentioned Arlington, and I kind of want to just give our viewers a little heads up of what's going to be happening at Arlington. Nathan, if you want to share.
Yeah, so Lucas and I have been talking for years. We've been friends for years before the podcast even started. But after a year of this show running, we're finally going to do a live episode out at NARBC Arlington. We're not sure the specifics of when and where it's all going to be recorded, but you guys will come along for the ride with us, be able to ask questions, that kind of thing. But I'm excited. Arlington's one of my favorite shows, like just really good people there, really good hang. I don't know, it holds a special place in my heart because that was my first NARBC.
Yeah, mine too. And it's a great show time and time again. Going to Bill's is always great. He's a great host. You get to see a world-class collection of green tree pythons, and then you get to the show, and there's a bunch of big retic people, a bunch of big ball python people, and yeah. So we're going to be doing our best to try to do the episode live at the actual show and have people come on as we do that. We need to find a booth who actually paid for the Wi-Fi, or if we can pay for the Wi-Fi, that would be great. So that's going to be the very first option. If not, then we're probably going to do it at the place that we're staying. Phil Thompson. Shout out to Phil for being a great host at Arlington's before. Nathan, I'm excited that you get to go and see his collection and get to see one of your hatchlings that
My
you actually
Anery
sold him.
golden child girl, that is, I actually sent a
You messed
picture
up.
of her to someone earlier today because of, just how
Perfect
good she
gold
looks.
job.
But I just want to give a quick shout out to Bill Stiegel because during that first Arlington NARBC, it was like months after I hatched my first super dwarf clutch. He had seen it, and I had no idea I was on his radar at all, and came up to me while I was at the bar and just congratulated me on my clutch, and
Nice.
was just really kind to me. So it was really impactful for me at the time as a new breeder. So it was just really cool. So thanks, Bill.
Yeah, Bill's one of those guys that he is known by everybody. Not not in just like green tree pythons and chondros, but like he is known across, and and it's crazy because he kind of like stays behind the scenes and he posts his pictures and stuff, but like he's not always out there being flashy. And yeah, stand up dude, and I'm excited to get to hang out, have some wine with him. But
How
yeah,
he doesn't need to try to be flashy when he has those crazy clutches. I mean, I can.
right, they do it for him.
They're insane.
Yeah. And I'm picking up my first green tree python there that weekend, so I'm excited. Whether you're just getting into retics or you've been breeding for years, the first place you want to visit is Stewart Design. More and more breeders keep showing up at shows, on Morph Market, and are all over social media. Sometimes it may feel possible to get anyone's attention. Stewart Designs helps small businesses like yours do big things through brand clarity, helping entrepreneurs to start and scale businesses that are easy to know and love. Their work can help any company or industry, but they've done a ton of work for ours. Stewart Design created the brands for US Arc, Canova, Reach Out Reptiles, Coiled, and dozens of other well-known reptile breeders. Like many of us, the owner of Stewart Design, Blake, is a keeper and breeder who fell in love with retics through first working with Garrett Hartle. Although Stewart Design does a lot of corporate work, Blake has a passion for working with people in the reptile industry. Stewart Design can help if you're just getting started or you're ready to take things to the next level. You're struggling to stand out and build your presence online or at shows? You don't want to be like the other guys or get lost in the crowd, and you want to make your own way doing what you love. And also, you have big ideas and know your business is special, but you need help sharing it with the reptile community. If something here resonates with you, reach out to Blake and have a conversation. To learn more or get started, visit stewartdesignbrands.com or call them at 855 SD Logos. Clear brands own markets. Stewart Design helps create them. If you are in the market for an enclosure for your reticulated python or any other one of your reptiles, Focus Cubed Habitats is your one-stop shop for not only the best-looking cages on the market, but also provide amazing features and add-ons to your cages. We partnered with Focus Cubed Habitats because they continue to innovate and change the way we house our animals unlike any other caging company out there. Their cages are designed intelligently and provide the most stylish and secure housing for your animals' comfort and well-being. Visit focuscubedhabitats.com for your animals' caging needs. Again, visit focuscubedhabitats.com for some amazing and stylish enclosures.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code reticlounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code reticlounge23 today for 15% off. Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton, is coming in hot with an amazing 3D printer, creating top-notch perches and other caging accessories for your beloved pets. Enrich your retics environment with their high-quality products. Use our promo code TRL10 for a 10% discount on your purchase. Visit them today at heliguyserpents.com and start giving your pets the best. Heli Guy Serpents, the premier source for 3D printed caging accessories. Again, that's www.heliguyserpents.com and use our promo code TRL10 for 10% off all of your 3D printed accessories today.
So, episode 59. We're going to kind of jump in. This is not like a uplifting type of episode.
We're going to treat this like a real podcast, Lucas, and just talk?
Yeah, we're talking, we're going through it. We got no list, no script. Definitely not like an uplifting type of episode, but one that I think has a lot of value to it. For those of you that don't know, I had my third retic that I ever owned was a 25% Kaltoa, 25% Madu, so 50% Superdorf, amelanistic albino. His name was Dwigged. People know him as
I thought it was Dwight.
It's Dwigged. So if anybody watches The Office, there's an episode where Michael Scott writes a script, like a manuscript of a movie, and he was writing the characters that he worked with in the movie and then replaced them all with other names. And there was like a stupid assistant that was a robot in the movie that was his assistant Dwight, but he misspelled it as Dwigged, so it didn't autocorrect. And so there was one Dwigged left in the script.
Oh.
So his name is Dwigged. Yeah. So
I still remember when you got that snake. Like I remember the excitement you had for him. Like I didn't fully understand AML at the time, and like just your passion with him. Like
that was on Reach Out Reptiles Patreon.
Yeah. No, I remember it pretty well. So like it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks, man.
He died. I bought him originally like without any like super big breeding plans. He was kind of just like, I love AML. And he also had Madu in him, which is not very common for AMLs. You know, I think Jackie B is the only one, or was the only one working with them. So he was kind of like a pet. And to be honest, and I don't say this just because, you know, he died and I'm trying to be sincere or anything, but he had the coolest personality. easily my most, like, if I could take any snake in my garage to a educational show, he probably would have been it. But he died, and so I ended up having to put him down. Like, I made the decision to uh, take him to a vet and get him put down after several vet appointment treatments. And so today's episode is going to be kind of a little bit about like what like when is it the right time to do that? How do we ethically do that? What are like unethical ways to do that? And just kind of talk about that aspect of it. But have you
Yeah,
ever?
well, I mean, I've of course I've had to like put an animal down, but
Yeah.
I mean, when we think of that, I mean, our general thought goes to, the typical house pets, right?
Mhm.
Dogs, cats. But it doesn't get talked enough in this industry how to go about it with your reptile. I mean, of course, we did an episode on how to find a reliable reptile vet, but I mean, this also kind of plays into that.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and I just let me like preface and talk about like just veterinary care with your snakes in general. This isn't just about reticulated pythons. Just this just happened to be about my retic, but this goes across the board. Veterinary care is important, and even for those of you that have been keeping for 20, 30 years, there's definitely going to be a time where you don't know what to do, and you need to have access to veterinary care. Um, and as a matter of fact, I think we talked about doing this episode with a vet, like talking about veterinary care and all that stuff with retics. But let me just highlight kind of the importance of like having that kind of in play before you have your animal, or if you get an animal, locating one right away, because you would like to think that nothing bad is going to happen to your animal, but sometimes shit happens. Um, and it's super important to have and not do it on your own if it's something that is outside of maybe a wedged tooth, or
Yeah.
there's
Stuck
certain.
shed. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, there's multiple things that you can kind of home remedy. I mean, uh,
The biggest home remedy for retics is like literally feed them a big meal, right? Like that. I'm serious. Like
yeah.
I've had some snakes that have caused like injuries, or I've done this or I've done that, and you give them
The
a
only
big
other
meal.
thing I can think of is like inverted hemipenes, like
Right.
the few
Right.
ways you can go about treating something like that. But
Or like a prolapse, right? I had a
yeah,
female here that had like a little tiny prolapse. It wasn't anything massive. It was literally maybe like a centimeter and a half that was sticking out. Put her in sugar water. It went back in a little bit. You use like a neosporin and mineral oil, and you kind of push it back in. You hold off on the feeding, and was able to do that well. But like that would have gotten any more chronic or any more intense where there was a lot more coming out. Like a vet would have been absolutely necessary. So yeah, just a little disclaimer, like vet care is super important with this, with keeping any reptile. And the reason why, I mean, any animal, but the reason why I'm emphasizing reptiles is because it's not easy to find an exotic vet for a lot of people.
so we're talking about Dwight or Dwight. Sorry, let me correct myself.
You could say
Uh,
you could say Dwight.
I'm gonna try to keep his name sacred. But uh, we've talked about you coming to the decision of having to put him down. Let's kind of talk about just what was going on with Dwight or Dwight. Okay,
Dwigged.
Dwight. Okay.
Dwigged. But yeah, so probably about like 15 months ago, I out of the blue, out of nowhere, I took him out of his enclosure, and I realized when I put him in his soaking tub that he had some lumps on his upper third of his body. So like there was one just below the neck that was a lump. There was one on the other side that was kind of a longer lump. Um, and that was weird, right? Like I was like, oh, what the heck happened? And so I decided to
You didn't decide to play Dr. Pimple Popper.
no, I didn't decide to do that, but what I did do was, my good old, what has worked for a lot of things, is fed him a big meal, uh, put him into a shed. He shed, and when he shed, it went away, and I was like, okay. and it went away for about 4 weeks. But then it came back, and when it came back, it was like just one side of his upper third was really swollen, like almost the entire upper third of his body was just like sticking out big time. And that's when it got like alarming, and I was like, okay, time to make a vet appointment. Now, granted, in my collection, I've never had a case of the worst thing I've ever had in my collection is mites. I've never had a respiratory infection in my collection. I've never had anything that would. This is the first snake, and it happened, a year ago, where I took him to the vet for the first time. That I actually had to take one of my snakes to the vet. So I've been very lucky over 5.5 years of keeping, and I've only had to take one snake. But so I took him to the vet, and I was thinking like, okay, let's see what these lumps happen. Like when I would feel the lumps, by the way, they were they didn't feel fluid like, but they weren't rock hard either. And so the very first thing that the vet did was stuck a needle inside one of the lumps to see if like and pulled it out. And no fluid came out, like no blood even came out. And so he's like, okay, well, it's not an abscess, like it's not pus, there's no fluid coming out. And so he did a cellular culture. So basically he put in a needle, he drew back, he got some of the blood cells extracted, he looked at it under the microscope, and he said everything looks normal. And so by the way, the vet at the time, or the vet that I have, Dr. Koch, he's probably one of the best exotic vets in the country. He's a vet for the San Antonio Zoo here. He has over 15 years experience working with large constrictors. And on top of that, there's a very well-known vet that's on Instagram that she's based out of Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm forgetting her name, but she's super popular on social media. I mean, he even was her, the mentor for her, and like getting her license and all that. So super qualified. This wasn't like a crappy vet. So he's like, I've never seen this before. He said, since it's got away before, he's like, have you switched beddings? What kind of cleaners do you use? All that stuff. And the very first step of action was just like, get him back on paper, because I had switched to Aspen. Get him back on paper. Like basically he was trying to see if there was any allergic reaction, because he was eating normal, didn't have a respiratory infection. Everything was fine besides these bumps coming and going. So he went through another shed cycle, and they went away, and they ended up coming back. So took him back to the vet, and this time we ran some blood. We did a viral testing, full viral testing.
Can I ask how uncomfortable he seemed during these times when these flare-ups would happen?
When the flare-ups would happen early on, it really wasn't too bad. It wasn't until towards like the last like 4 to 6 months where I hated getting him out, or I hated giving him a antibiotic.
And we were just talking about how he was the animal that potentially would be educational.
Super social.
Like, the animal you would take around kids and handle with them.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't until the end, but like pretty standard, like nothing. He didn't seem like he was uncomfortable, and was acting normal, eating normal, shedding normal, pooping normal. Everything was normal besides these lumps would come and go. But the second time around, we did a blood panel, and the blood showed that his white blood cell count was high, which is indicative of an infection. And so they prescribed a round of 10 antibiotics of, man, I'm going to forget. It's the antibiotic that you're supposed to keep in the freezer. Someone is probably going to drop it down in the comments.
Oh yeah. I even like kind of, I want to take a stab at it, but I'm not going to, just at risk of being wrong.
Right. Exactly. So can't think of it off the top of my head, but so he did that. And it went well. Like by injection 5, all lumps were gone, never came back for the rest of the treatment round. And they, about 10 days after his last injection, they came back, and they came back pretty intense. Like at that point I was like,
that's
whoa,
pretty rapid.
Right. Like 10 days after. And I was like, whoa, this is like 10 days after the antibiotic round. It was the worst at that time that I had seen it. And I was like, this is weird. So set up another vet appointment, and we did another viral testing just to be sure. And we did really intensive blood work, like liver functioning, any fungal. Um, there's a
Did
fungal
you ever do
exam.
any fecal samples?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the last things, and there's no parasites. Um, and so no parasites, and they also tested for that one virus. Again, I'm not a virologist, but there's a virus that you test through fecal. Um, so basically, any virus that's out there, we test it for, and
Mm-hmm.
then we did the fungal blood work. We did a specific like infection blood work, um, and nothing was coming up. And again, this top tier vet and me and another vet, exotic vet that worked there were just all like, at this point, he brought in the other vet who, again, he kind of like supervised through. Um, and we just didn't know. Um, and at this point, I was well over $2,000 in
Mm-hmm.
with all the different exams and everything that we had done. Um, I was changing up his feeding, by the way. He, rats, uh, uh, birds, pigs, rabbits. I was trying to see if he just was building a sensitivity to a certain type of food. I
Yeah,
don't know.
throwing everything at him.
The,
No, I
yeah.
get that. I was going to bring this up later, but just kind of in the stuff you were mentioning, I feel like it's appropriate now. Uh, are you going to get a necropsy done with the same vet? Because I feel like this could be uh, as valuable for the vet in the long run as it is
So,
for
um,
the community as a whole, maybe the veterinary community
yeah, I'll
in
get back.
terms of retic care.
Yeah, I'll get back to that.
Mhm.
Because I want to, that's going to play a part in what I'm about to say, and I'll
Yeah,
speak on
that's
that.
why I wanted to hold it for later, but I was like, it's
I mean,
kind of like,
it's a good question.
yeah.
But we're almost at the end of the story here. So at that point, um, the vets looked at me and they're like, "Listen, we're gonna." It seemed like the antibiotics worked really well, but maybe we didn't do them long enough, and some infections might take a little bit longer. Um,
Hell, I was on my antibiotics for the better part of a year
yeah,
before I was cleared for surgery. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean it makes sense to me.
right. So they're like, "Okay, this worked, so we'll do it again, but instead of for 10 injections, we'll do it for 20 injections every 3 days." So that is a um, I don't know. I'm not a math person, but I think that's 2 months worth of injections. And this is getting more recent. And again, every blood panel, every viral panel, bacterial panel, nothing was standing out and coming up. Only that his white blood cells were high, indicating that he had some form of infection. Um,
Yeah, he's fighting something.
he's fighting something. And so, I had him in a large ARS rack at the time. I switched him over to a 5 foot enclosure. Um, you know, changed beddings a bunch of time, put him back in the rack, like did everything I could to try to see if there was anything in the husbandry aspect that I was doing that was screwing him over. But nothing seemed to really make a difference. So uh, I'm going through the injection rounds and I'm noticing really no improvement. Like they would come and they would go like they used to, but it was during like his seventh injection that I looked at him and it was probably the worst at the time that I'd ever seen him. And I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. This is the seventh out of 20 injections. He should at least slowly be improving at this point, and he looks worse than he ever has. So
Hmm.
I called the vet, let them know. They said kind of continue with treatment. Um, and so now we are on injection. I've done 10 injections. And on the 11th injection, and this happened, I mean, from the time that we're recording, I don't know, by the time that this releases, like less than 2 weeks from when you guys are hearing this, I went to go give him his 11th injection and I looked at him and it was the worst I had seen him. And throughout this entire process of giving him these injections, his discomfort like dramatically like increased. Restraining him to give him an injection was a nightmare. Getting him out, even to put him in a tub to clean his enclosure, nightmare. And not that he was an asshole or anything, but just barely touching him, he would flinch and thrash. He
He was
was
in pain.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely am not a snake psychologist, so pain
Right.
is probably the right word, but the way that I can at least accurately describe it, he was clearly uncomfortable.
You spend enough time with your animals, doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna notice when that time comes.
Yeah.
I mean, I know all of us that have had dogs, that last to an old age and just die of natural causes, or are getting close to the point of being put down. There's just comes a time where it's just you're keeping the animal alive more for your comfort than their comfort.
Right. And I was just hoping that, like, at one point during this round of antibiotics, I would see the improvement that I saw in the first round. Um,
Yeah.
but when I opened that tub up on that Sunday, or I opened up the rack, large ARS rack, by the way, it's 5 feet long, so I'm not keeping a 4.5-year-old retic in a FB70. In case anyone tries to come at me.
You keep my tiny hatchling that can fit in the palm of your hand in a giant ARS huge tub that's meant for adult boas in
Right.
a naturalistic enclosure. So
I'm just
yeah,
just saying, dude.
we
There's
can
there's
silence that right now.
there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there, but anyways, and I opened it up and I looked at him going to give him the injection, and I tapped him with the hook, and then I tried just picking him up because he, at this point, the lumps were starting to even look red on the bottom side of his belly. The scales were kind of just like flared up. You can tell that it never looked that bad before. And so um that's when I had already been thinking prior to this, like I had it in my mind. I was like, if he doesn't make improvement by like injection 15, I gotta put him down. And when I saw him like that, I decided on Monday to no, it was on Monday, and then I decided that next day on Tuesday to call and ask him if I could come in on Friday and drop him off to put him down. Now, the vets gave me some other recommendations. They said the next thing we would do is a CT scan and echocardiogram. Liver functioning looked normal according to all the other blood work and everything that we did. Everything looked fine. So now we're starting to get into scanning and stuff. And I just want to give you guys just a little aspect of this. At the time that I called to want to put him down, I had spent $2,500 on him, on vet bills and the medicine, and spent a lot of freaking money. And yeah, I'm a breeder, and you can make the case of like, oh, that's just one snake. But at the end of the day, spending that much money on vets, it's not a business expense that a lot of people keep in the bank to account for, especially someone who's new and still trying to pay off a garage renovation, right? Um,
Yeah,
and so
I mean, I can make it happen and I can pay off those vet bills, but it's not going to be an immediate thing that I already just, you know,
right,
have the money
exactly,
set aside for.
exactly. And so I took him in on Friday to get him put down, and
Mhm.
the
Can we
I
talk a little bit? I know you're going to talk about it, but
the
are you going to?
necropsy.
No, 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 no. I want you to go into detail about the process of, everyone's, most people have gone through the process of putting one of their mammals, like the dog or cat, down. So I want to have you go through what everything was like technically as well.
Yeah. Um, and let me answer real quick on the necropsy thing and the reason why. So I didn't end up doing it. And the reason why is because when I asked them for a quote and a price, I had thought about it before and asked for a quote and a price. It was a lot of money. And then I also was going to have him put down at the vet, which cost money as well. And again, this was a lot of money, and I'm sure I'll probably regret not getting the necropsy done. But
Do you mind sharing the number?
for the necropsy,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was gonna be like it was like a like just barely under four figures. So like I think it was eight something.
Okay.
and then it was another $300 to get him put down and cremated. Right, like I had two options with getting him put down. They're like, yeah, you can put him down and then we give him back to you, or you put him down and we cremate him for you. And I was like, well, I don't want a dead snake, especially like my pet that I love. Like, I don't want to carry a bag home, and what am I going to do with it?
Yeah, I
So
mean, having a hatchling that doesn't make it out of the egg in your freezer, and then
right, like
something you've raised for that long, yeah, there's a lot
hatch,
of emotional attachment there for sure.
and not only that, but also like a hatchling in a freezer is, takes up a tiny spot. An 8.5, 9 foot snake
That's
in a
that's
freezer.
gonna that's gonna lead into another conversation, just the freezer alone.
Right, exactly. So I decided not to do the necropsy, and I know a lot of listeners are going to be like, well, you should have, and I should have. But at that point, like, I want you guys to know that, like, let me get into a little bit about Nathan's comment and what he wants me to go into, like the decision to put him down. And there's probably going to be a lot of like long, I mean, maybe not a lot. Maybe I'm kind of overestimating how many people listen to us, but there's people that have been doing this a long time, and they see their animals as business investments, and animals do die, right? Like that's part of keeping and breeding, especially if you have a large number of snakes, you're going to have animals die. But when I decided at that point to not do the necropsy, and on top of that, the putting him down at the vet instead of just sticking him in the freezer, it was more of like at that point, it was obviously like an emotional decision to actually have to decide to do that, because again, I had 10 more injections to give him, and I kept holding on to hope that he would get better. And I was, I asked the vet, like, hey, can we increase the dosage? He's like, he's kind of on the max dose for his weight and size for that long of a period. We don't want to hurt his kidneys. We don't want to do anything that might exacerbate or make anything worse. So I'm like, okay, so this is the dose that we can go to. And he's like, yeah. So I even fought from that aspect. I was like, can we increase the dose? Maybe it'll help. Can we shorten the length to see if the increase helps? Like they felt confident on keeping it where it's at for the length of time. And I don't know, man. I just like, it's one of those things where it's absolutely like, a lot of people say like, oh, it's like, I made a post about him, and I want to thank everyone who like reached out, had your
Hmm.
sentiments in your words. Like that meant a lot. Yes, I cried during that day. Just kind of reading through some of that. And for a lot of like breeders who've been doing this for a while, this is probably going to sound to them like, oh, that's stupid. You're breeding snakes. You probably no, but again, like I got this dude as a pet. This guy had, uh, he was not a snake I wanted to lose. No snake I want to lose, but like definitely not him. Um, so, but a lot of people were saying like, "Hey, it's a tough decision," and a lot of people were saying that. But I'm going to be honest, like that day that I saw him, and I didn't even give him his injection that day, because I made that decision on a dime where I was like, it really wasn't that hard of a decision. Like I looked at him and I was like, I have to.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
because he looked miserable. He didn't even want me to touch him. And this was his second round of antibiotics. So at this point, he's had 20 injections total. And there were times where I'd give him his injection, he wouldn't even put up a fight because he knew the drill. Um, and this is a time where like I tapped him with the hook and just like bucked me, and I knew he's not going to bite me. So I went to go pick him up, and he just really quickly ran away from me. Like it was very different. Um, and it was an easy decision. I was like, I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
And the reason why I decided not to do the CT scan and anything else is because it's a really fine balance when you have a business breeding these animals, but you also love them to death. But from a business perspective, um, hopefully this doesn't sound too terrible, but from business perspective, I spent $950 on the snake. I'm already $2,500 deep in vet bills. Echocardiogram would have been another $850. A CT scan would have been an additional $1,000. They wanted to do that at the same time to rule out two things. So we're talking about a lot of money. And at that point, that was going to take a lot more money. Again, that's the business side talking, but then again, that's a lot more time that he was miserable. And so I just I
That's the ultimate thing to me. Like, if he were not uncomfortable, it was just superficial lumps, and he wasn't acting out in pain, then that's one thing. He's acting out
right.
in pain, like, that's where it becomes that easy decision.
Yeah.
And I don't think in the end of the day your ultimate motivation was based on the amount of money that you spent on him.
No, not at all. And I mean, it played a portion. So, like, when they told me, when I paid for the second round of antibiotics, and they told me what the next steps would be if this was not effective, that was going through my mind. Business wise, at the time, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go this far into it. But the decision to have him euthanized was an easy decision because I put him first over me, and I guess that's one thing. Like, if we're gonna teach anything about this, and we're gonna talk about like what it takes to kind of come to this decision, is a lot of times we get caught up in our emotional aspect, in our attachment to these animals, and that's very easy to do. And it's not wrong of you guys to do that. It's totally okay for you guys to do that, because if you love your animal, you love your animal. It goes for a dog, cat, reptile, doesn't matter. And you don't want to see them dead. Um, but fortunately for me, and I mean, again, I'm a therapist in my day job, and I don't even know how healthy of this mentally. There's a switch that I guess I was able to turn on and off, and I made it about him from the get go instead of worrying about me. And I knew that if I made it about him and I had to put him down, that the I would then make it about me afterwards, right? Like the mourning, grieving process, all that stuff. And if you guys don't think grief or mourning happens with animals or pets, like, it absolutely does. I'm sure anybody listening who's lost an animal that they loved, it sucks.
Yeah, man, it sucks to have to even relive this.
Yeah, I mean, talking about it is hard, but it's yeah. I mean, I think where we're getting into the episode's important. It's like, when do we make that decision, and how do we do it in an ethical manner? Like, and I think that's like, again, when it comes to how I made that decision, is I put his needs and wants before mine. I wanted him alive. I could have kept him alive longer, and but I put his needs before mine. So I guess that's step one, and like what you need to do when it comes to making that decision is put their needs before yours. And snakes don't really tell us what their needs are, right? They're snakes. And I mean, at that point, like, but I mean,
You care for these animals well enough, and you can tell when it's that time. I mean, we've kind of beat that dead horse a little bit, but I mean,
was that
it's
pun intended? Because that was a good one if it was.
no, not at all.
We beat that dead snake with a
Oh no. Um oh god, dig yourself out of this hole.
comedic
No,
relief, dude. I told you I got punchlines.
no, but I mean, like, yeah, it's a snake, yeah, it's a reptile, but ultimately you know this animal, and you know what's best for the animal,
Right.
especially when it comes to just comfort.
But
So
but
I
that's
ultimate
bullshit.
on
But that's bullshit too. Like, yeah, it's a snake and it's a red. No, I mean, I
no,
mean,
that's why I mean, I kind of said it's bullshit.
yeah, like, exactly. Like, it's not just a snake. Like, I mean, all of you guys that are listening to us, we're all weird. We like snakes, um, and we like reptiles, right? Where majority of the people look at us and we're weird. But my snakes are no different than my cats and my dogs when it comes to those that I'm an animal lover. Like, I'll see a squirrel outside and my eyes light up. And
I mean, if you're in this, if you love snakes, if you love retics, you ultimately have a big heart, because we're loving the animals that ultimately the bulk of the population can't stand to be around.
right.
You know, So I
Sorry to
never
cut you
do
off.
this
Go
on
ahead.
I never do this on pod. I don't even remember what I was gonna say, but I never do this on podcasts. But this one's for you, Dwight.
Wait. There you go. Oh, dude, you never do this live. That's awesome. I appreciate that. I'm sure he does too. Dwight's personality. If he was a human, he totally would fucking hit a rig. But now let's get into the portion of like how to ethically euthanize your animal that you need to. And this is a tough conversation. Um,
Yeah, that's the one part that I asked about. That I like. I'm pretty sure I have an idea of how the procedure's technically done, but I would love to hear.
no, so actually, I didn't even ask.
Oh, you didn't get to be in the room for it?
I had to go to work, man. I so
Oh,
being a therapist,
that's awful.
my schedule is full, and you see, and this is whether you believe in the universe or you believe in God, whatever the case may be. I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I really think that was a day like I had a full schedule of 6 clients, and I had cancellations and no show. I only had to see one client that day, and it happened to be a client that um, was a teenager that was it's a client that I really really enjoy seeing. So that was really relieving. Like it allowed me to get to work, to sit down, breathe. I had some tears. I got to kind of make my post for him, and read people, sending me console. Like I got time, and even on my drive home, I got some more time. And later that evening, Sean came over to help me clean the snakes, and we got to talk about Dwight a little bit. Like it ended up being, I think, really healthy for my process of kind of grief. It, it worked out. But yeah, I didn't get to be in the room for it. But when I put him in his uh, when I put him in the tote to take him over to the vet, I kind of sat down on the floor with him and pet him a couple times, even though he was kind of bucking me and didn't want to be touched. But yeah, so that was that process for him. But so what I looked up online is they typically use a gas to make them go to sleep, and then they give them it's the same process for dogs and cats
Yeah, it's
usually.
like but don't they do a face mask for?
I mean, they might have. I don't know how else they would administer gas, but I would assume that it's probably a tube
I
that
mean,
goes into their
it's either that or just like injection, like you get with a dog, just a quick.
right. Anyone else know? Let us, drop it in the comments if you've been able to watch that before. But
Well, and
so,
if you are a reptile vet that happens upon this episode, or you have a reptile vet that you think may be interested in talking about topics like this, send them
oh,
our way.
Arlington, we might be able to. I'm gonna look up
See,
her name
we
because
we've pretty much talked about all the sadness. I feel like we should kind of jump back to Arlington a little bit.
I mean, wait. Let's talk about. I feel like it's important to talk about like the ethics of like euthanizing an animal because there are people out there that are sticking 10-foot snakes in
No,
freezers.
no, yeah, okay, yep,
Like that.
yep.
I
Sorry,
feel like
no,
that's
no, no, no. You okay? You're right. You're right.
um so yeah, I'm trying to look up right now in terms of the vet that I'm talking about. Um she's who I'd love to have on, but um anyways, yeah, so um for those of you that don't know, there's a like the most common way that people put their snakes down, whether it's hatchling or whether it's even full grown adults. I mean, I hate to bring this up, but like you look at the slither files, and the very first golden child that was ever imported into the U.S. Was put,
Solaire Golden Child.
yes, good old Solaire golden child was put in, was stuck in a freezer because he was unmanageable by Slither Inc. And the picture that I'm referring to demonstrated the
No health issues.
no health issues, just literally because like this snake is a nightmare and no one else can keep him if I can't keep him. Typical Samson thought.
Yeah,
And
this is not a topic that I love
no, I don't either. But
revisiting, but yeah, like that's what this is one of the things that bugs me the most about that whole situation. That animal was healthy.
Healthy, it was fine. Well, I mean,
Well, okay.
who knows? It's
Yeah,
Samson's place, but
healthy is a stretch, I will admit. But
it was put
it
down because of its behavior.
it
Let's just
didn't
say
have
that.
it didn't have any visible diseases, let's say that.
Right. But yeah, there was a picture of that snake after it was frozen in the garbage bag that they opened up and took a picture of, and the snake was literally looking like it was lunging out, mouth open, like doing its absolute best to fight for its life to try to get out. And for those of you that don't know what happens to snakes, like a lot of people think like, oh, they're cold blooded, so they just
What are we told happens to snakes, Lucas, when we put them in the freezer? Because I've been told a couple things.
So what I am so what essentially happens is their blood and the fluids in their body start to crystallize.
No,
And when
I
they
don't want to talk about the scientific. I want to talk about what you've been told by other people in the industry.
that they go to sleep.
They go to sleep.
Yeah, they go to sleep.
Oh, they're cold-blooded creatures, so they just slow down and they go to sleep. They're just fine.
Right. And that's not what happens. What happens is that the fluid and the blood in their body crystallizes, and when they crystallizes, it's like they're feeling these cracks that are happening. It's a painful process.
What happens when we get too cold?
We shiver.
We shiver. Our body tries to compensate for that.
Right, to fight it.
So what makes us think the opposite wouldn't happen in a cold-blooded creature?
Right, exactly. And what's cool about cold-blooded animals is that they actually they don't have the ability to, so like for us as warm-blooded humans, creatures, we have the ability to cool ourselves down by means of sweating and all these other things, but cold-blooded creatures have
The
the
fever.
ability to warm themselves up.
The fever sweats, like we have
Right.
ways to regulate.
Yeah. Cold-blooded animals do the opposite. So it's literally fighting to try to shoot its body temperature up, and it's obviously not going to win. But nonetheless, super painful process. So is that ethical?
I don't think we even need to answer that, but rhetorically, yes. Or no,
Right.
Is that ethical? No. It is not ethical. Bite my tongue.
So
dig out of another hole.
Jeez. Is that ethical? Absolutely.
Speaking too fast, I need to think, Lucas, a little bit.
So, and then so and I'm not talking about like freezing hatchlings or whatever the case may be. Like that's a whole different discussion that requires a whole different episode, because there's a lot of layers in regards to like ethics and morals and like what's worse. But regardless, that was not an option for me, was to put him in a freezer, because I know the reality of what happens when you put a snake in the freezer. And so
Yeah. I mean, I would rather know an animal's perished. I'll get into something that happened to me this year. I had, I think 3 or 4 babies that just wouldn't eat on their own. So made sure it wasn't a digestion issue, worked out any, remnants of the yolk, and the ones that hadn't eaten, I decided to try to assist feed. 2 of them took to it super well, and then one just didn't, and died during assist feeding. And I could kind of tell it was about to happen, but did everything I could to try to intervene in the situation. Yeah, and even when I knew it was time, like I had to know for damn sure that snake had nothing left in it before I put it in the freezer, just for any peace of mind knowing that animal didn't go into the freezer alive and having to suffer more.
Right. And like outside of the freezer, there's like a more humane way that like if you want to do it yourself, you can, which is like the
faster way. I think it's harder on the keeper for sure. It's in terms of how fast it's over for the animal. Yes,
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that yet, but
Oh, okay.
I could not do that. I know
Yeah,
people that I know. So
mm,
we're referring to the two-step method of your I forget what the process is called, but basically where you're sticking a needle into your head and then you're driving,
Python scramble.
yeah, scrambling. Um, but that was 1000% not like not an option. Um, and I'll admit that there's a third option that I was googling and looking into, which is basically like a CO2 chamber that people use for the rodents to put them down. Um, and I was looking into that and the supplies needed. And the conclusion that I came to is that uh, if you don't do it correctly, you choke and suffocate your snake. And I was not about to do that for the first time with my snake that I, I obviously was not just like a fiscal financial breeder type of point of view with this animal. Like I kept asking myself, like, what if he did choke and die and I didn't know because he was in a chamber and I couldn't see him, and like what if it wasn't just like him going to sleep and then dying, and I didn't want to live with that. So yeah, I spent the money and I took him to the vet, and at the end of the day I definitely think that that's the most uh ethical, humane way. And yeah, it costs money, but um yeah, I guess I'm just not at the point, and I don't think I'll ever reach that point to where I want to put an adult snake in a freezer, or I'd rather have my conscience clean, and I still care for the well-being of the animal, right? Which is why I made the decision to put him down.
Yeah, it sucks. This is the first year I've lost an animal in
Me
terms
too.
of reptiles,
Well,
and
I guess not for me, but
I mean it's all hatchling stuff, which of course that's higher risk, and it
part of the
it
game,
cut
kind of.
yeah, part of the game. Yeah, you have to be ready for it, and I always knew it was a possibility, and not even a possibility, but a guarantee. Um, when you breed animals, you're going to have losses for sure. Um, and even in those times, I was really trying to do my best to make sure that everything was as humane as possible, and it's hard. It's as hard on the animals as it is the keeper.
Yeah, and so that's kind of that process, and really when it comes down to it, and the ethics of it is uh, just put the animal first. Like I'm sure that's why all of us get into these animals, because we love them. Um, and so the day that they die, still love them in that way, right? Like don't lose sight of that, because you start producing and breeding and have uh clutches not working out for you and you're in business debt or whatever the case may be, that drives people to the easy route. Even I will say this, it cost me $320 to euthanize, cremate, and get like the little clay memorial and the little ashes. Like I'm gonna have his ashes and I'll have a clay printing of his head. And that still was only $300, right? So I feel like number one, if you have snakes dying like so much that that's going to be a major business expense for you, then that's a whole different discussion that we need to have. But if you're having snakes die seldomly, or whatever the case may be, that it's not happening often, like that's not a lot of money to make sure that it's done ethically, safely, and respectfully, and um
Well, and
the
and yeah, like you said, I mean, this is one of you know a couple dozen animals that you have that you know has made it to an adulthood that has had any issues like this. So I
yeah,
mean,
the
you?
that,
I
that
mean,
was
you
the
did
only
have
one.
you did no. Well, I mean, you did have the egg bound girl for a minute there that was
um
sent to you with eggs.
yeah, I had to take her to, yeah, she was sent to
But
me
that
gravid,
that's I
and
mean, yeah, that's just
But that was a quick vet visit. The vet was like, "Oh, let me put my finger up her cloaca," and I was like, "That's pretty invasive." I'm holding one.
Did she
I'm holding.
consent?
No, I mean, to be honest, she actually was pretty calm during that process. But it was a very quick, like, and again, just kudos to Dr. Koch. He's phenomenal, but literally took him less than like 20 seconds to stick his finger up there, find the
Didn't even have to
no
palpate.
surgery. No, I mean, so we palpated and we took some x-rays, right? And he felt it and he's like, yeah, this is the only one. And then just literally shoved his finger up of her, massaged through, and just worked it out. And it literally was like the moment that his finger entered her cloaca, it took like 15 seconds.
Hmm.
And that was that, right? He was like, hey, keep her on paper, don't put her on bedding, and just watch her. If you see like pink discharge, like come bring her back. She might be getting an infection, but if you keep her enclosure clean, she should be good. And she was good.
Yeah, that's the only instance I can think of in terms of any other adult animals that you've had.
Yeah, I've never. So she was the very first and only snake I've had to take to the vet, and then Dwight's whole process was my second experience. But the biggest thing that really sucks about this whole thing would see, even I said Dwight.
I was about to call you out, but I was like, it's his time of grief. I'm not going to
No,
say
so
anything.
his name is Dwight, but so many people I've called him Dwight. I say it naturally. Yeah, the worst part about this was again that this was a snake that was awesome to chill with, awesome to handle. Jennifer of Mod Exotics, Phil of Cold, what is it, Thompson Cold Blooded, Jordan or Joey Carpenter. He's not keeping snakes anymore, but they got to come over and they got to hold him, and they can attest to, they held my Kaiwati, the wild caught Kalatoa. They held probably a dozen or close to a dozen snakes that day, and every single one of them were just obsessed with Dwight. And the worst part about this, and the part that really like hit me the most, that sucked, was just the fact that his last 15 months that I got to spend with him was me being terrified that he had something that would spread to my collection. And even after all the viral negative, and the bacterial negative and stuff, I was still just not willing to risk that. And yeah, 15 months of just minimal interaction, putting him in a tub, cleaning the enclosure. That's the worst part of it, is that I didn't actually get to enjoy him for over not, I mean, I still enjoyed the time that I had with him, but not how I used to with him. I handle my animals even when I'm busy as hell. I take the time to do that. And I did not get to do that with him because I was just too scared that it was going to impact other animals. So, so yeah, that's kind of the worst part of it all, other than him, not being alive right now. But
Yeah,
yeah,
man. On the behalf of me, you know the general retic community. I know our Discord too. We're super sorry for your loss, man.
yeah, yeah. And I appreciate you and everyone that reached out and said something. And yeah, I mean, people, even texted me, messaged me, commented on the post, whatever the case may be. Even some of the bigger mainland people, had something to say. I think that a
No,
lot of people
you had big plans for him.
yeah, I mean, again, he started off as a pet with no big plans, but yeah, I was gonna work with I was gonna call them snowmells. I was gonna do a AML snow project and motley AML snows,
I
and
remember the passion when you were talking about those eyes.
I was yeah, I was hoping to create those AML red ruby eyes with the silver eyes, like a really crazy. I was hoping what would be like really pink bright eyes, whatever the hell it would have been,
I
but
would think like almost peachy, like almost like ashy peachy.
right, right. And so yeah, definitely don't get to see that out through. I was super excited about that once the brain kind of clicked, and I started getting into kind of breeder mode and seeing what I could do with the animals I had bought prior to me, even having an idea that I was going to breed. But yeah, that it's a bummer not being able to pursue that, but definitely doesn't compare to losing him. But yeah, anyways, thank you to everyone who did reach out. Even some of the bigger mainland people were reaching out to me. And what I was saying was, I think that I think a lot of people that have lost snakes that they've loved and have had to go through that, it's just something that you don't like. And so you automatically feel for someone who has to go through it as well.
Yeah.
So Arlington.
Yeah. Second one. First time doing the podcast in person. It'll be interesting. Yeah. I'm excited for it, man. Always excited to see the people there. Always excited for the auction.
The auction was a blast.
Third year as a breeder.
You
Like
should you'll
I'm really excited. Like this is the first year I've been to any NARBC that like I just feel good about where I'm at.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, me too. And you'll get the opportunity. You'll sit at the VIP Tech table with us.
I love Ryan. I mean,
Yeah.
he made he was one of those people at my first NARBC that like just went above and beyond to make me feel welcome into the community. I mean, first night I was there with my ex fiance, and she's kind of like to keep me to herself and not like to socialize outside. And Ryan pulled us aside and you know made us talk for the night and got us pretty lit at the bar. And he got us to talk until we couldn't hang anymore. We're like, all right, we're
Right.
too out of it, we have to go
Right.
back.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, he was one of those people that just like made this a hobby that I continue to strive to just be better in.
Right. And that he has this like passion that's very infectious. So shout out to Ryan
It's insane.
and to Erica with VipTech, one of our sponsors.
Well, and I said like this is the year that like I feel like not totally out of place. And he was one of those people just like Bill, like I mentioned at the start of the episode, like he had seen what I did with the Super Dwarf project the first year, and he's like, "No, dude, you need to be pumped on that. You're doing some big shit." And I was just like, it didn't feel real to me. Like
you're
it just
fucking right, Bill.
no, that was Ryan that said that, and it was
Oh,
just
okay.
like in drunken conversation, but like it was just cool to get a little bit of reassurance
And
again from
confidence
some.
boosts, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
not that I need anyone to stroke the ego, but like you like to think that you're not just doing something that's totally
Right.
irrelevant when you breed your animals.
Yeah, and it's not to stroke the ego. It's to boost the confidence. And I mean, I haven't been doing this long enough for me to be confident. Like it does feel good when people acknowledge what you're doing and you're like, I don't know, am I doing something good? And people are like, yeah, you are. It's like, okay, great. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to even just spending time at Phil's place, hanging out.
This is my first time at Bill's. I'm really excited for that.
Oh, I said
Um,
Phil, but
I
Bill's
know.
too. But Phil,
Phil's. I mean, that Annery Golden Child. If we do this live at Phil's, you better believe that Annery Golden Child is the star of the show.
oh, without a doubt. And I'll definitely be holding one of his snakes too. Maybe it's not the Retic Lounge. I mean, this is the Retic Lounge, but I'm
We
gonna
need to
see.
set it up like a lounge, though. Since this is the first live episode, we have to like
Oh, we
aesthetically
won't
set it up like
we
like almost like a cigar lounge or something like that.
we won't be able to do that if we do it at Arlington.
Well, I mean, the closest thing I've seen, and this is only for Patreon members, and this was a really early release, but you can go back in the archives and look for it. It was your fireside chat at the Arlington that I had to miss last year.
Yeah, with Ryan Adler and
That was enough
Phil
of a
sleeping in the
lounge.
background.
Yeah, yeah. A group of people talking about the animals we love gathered around a central point, whether it be a coffee table, whether it be a fire. I just like it doesn't even have to be that hard.
And we were blasted like you should be at a lounge too. So that was great.
Well, like I said about the hang at Arlington, it's world class. So
It's good stuff. But if any of you that are listening are going to Arlington, drop it in the comments. We'd love to meet you guys. I'm gonna bring the rest of the TRL stickers I have here, so come get them while you
yeah,
have
I'll
them.
grab the last of mine too, because we need to update those
Yeah, we
relatively
do.
soon.
We need to get new stickers, new shirts. And yeah, I definitely don't want to end this episode without giving a shout out to our Patreon members. For those of you that continue to support us through everything, we appreciate you. And yeah, I'm trying to think. Anything else that you got before we wrap up?
No, this is coming out before Arlington, so please drop a comment if you're going to be there. I'm pretty confident that I'll be the only bald guy with a black arm there. So if you see me, come say hi.
There you go. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And, hopefully on a down episode, there was something to take from this. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. And we will see you guys at Arlington.
Bye.